Let's start off by crediting South Florida. They played with the appropriate level of force and competitiveness. Really did a great job of...
Is a Team USA coach really resigning? Right after Caitlinclark was crowned the best player in the world. That's the explosive question that's been whispered in the darkest corners of the internet. A story that the mainstream media seems determined to ignore. Most people, the ones who only skim the headlines, will tell you it's a coincidence. Two completely separate events that just happen to occur around the same time. They'll say it's just business as usual. But the deeper you dig, the more the official story starts to fray at the edges, revealing what might be the first shot fired in a silent, bitter war for the soul of women's basketball. This isn't a simple story about one player being left off a team or one coach deciding to hang it up. This is about a deeply entrenched system fighting for its life against a phenom who threatens to tear it all down with her unprecedented fame and revolutionary talent. And the origins of this conflict didn't start with the Olympic snub. They began years before anyone in the mainstream even knew her name on a global stage, where she sent a clear, undeniable message to the world's basketball elite. I am inevitable. Before the record-breaking college seasons, before the multi-million-dollar endorsement deals with Nike and Gatorade, and long before she became the single most important figure in her sport, Caitlinclark sent a deafening warning shot across the bow of the entire world. The year was 2021. While most of America was still focused on the established, well-known stars of the WNBA and the national team, Clark was quietly leading a new generation of American talent at the FIA U19 World Cup in Hungary. She didn't just participate, she utterly dominated the tournament against the best young players from basketball powerhouses like Australia, Spain, and Russia. She was a puzzle no one could solve. She averaged nearly 15 points, over 5 assists, and 5 rebounds per game. But even those impressive numbers don't tell the full story. It was the way she played, the fearless logo threes that broke the spirit of her opponents, the dazzling no-look passes that created easy bucket for her teammates. She was a one-woman offensive system that the rigid, structured international game simply had no answer for. At the end of the tournament, Team USA stood on top of the podium, their gold medals gleaming, and it was Caitlinclark who was crowned the tournament's most valuable player. This wasn't a minor achievement. This was a statement. This was concrete, irrefutable proof. Years before her Iowa fame exploded that her electrifying, high-risk style of play didn't just work against Big Ten defenses, worked against the best in the world. She had been tested on the biggest international stage available to her, and she had emerged not just as a winner but as the single best player there. This fact is the cornerstone of the entire controversy because it systematically dismantles the flimsy excuses that would later be constructed to justify keeping her out of the spotlight. But as Clark's star was beginning its meteoric ascent, a towering figure in the world of USA basketball was preparing to step away from the throne, setting the stage for a dramatic power shift that would ultimately change everything. Right as the world was getting its first real taste of Caitlinclark's global potential, the coaching landscape of Team USA was undergoing a seismic, dynastic shift. Dawn Staley, a living legend of the sport, both as a Hall of Fame player and a championship-winning coach, announced she was stepping down as head coach of the women's national team. Officially, her departure was presented as the end of a glorious, triumphant chapter. She had led the team to yet another Olympic gold medal, solidifying her legacy as one of the greatest to ever do it. It was a planned, celebrated, and perfectly choreographed exit, but the timing, in retrospect, was impossible to ignore. Staley represented an entire era, a specific, our hardened way of doing things that had brought USA basketball decades of unprecedented, unquestioned success. Her system was built on a rigid hierarchy, on the currency of experience, and on a deep, almost military-like sense of team cohesion, where seniority was law. Her stepping down wasn't just a simple coaching change. It was the end of a dynasty's leadership. This created a massive power vacuum, and the person who would eventually fill it would have the authority to either embrace the coming wave of the future or to double down on the ironclad traditions of the past. Departure of a coach as influential as Staley signified that the old guard was moving on, but what few realized at the time was that the brutally effective system she helped perfect would remain firmly in place, at becoming a fortress that even the world's most popular and talented player might not be able to breach. And the events that followed would prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the new regime had absolutely no intention of handing over the keys to the kingdom to a young, unpredictable revolutionary. With Dawn Staley's golden era officially over, the reins of Team USA were handed to Cheryl Reeve, a highly respected and immensely successful WNBA coach known for her gritty, defensive-minded, and fundamentally non-nonsense approach to the game. Reeve is a disciple of the old school, a coach whose entire philosophy is built around structure, discipline, and the unwavering idea that the team is always, under all circumstances, more important than any one individual. Her multiple championships with the Minnesota Lynx were forged in the fires of defense and teamwork. She values veterans who have been through the international wars, players who understand the unwritten rules of the hierarchy and have meticulously paid their dues within the tightly controlled USA basketball system. This philosophy is the philosophical polar opposite of everything Caitlin-Clark represents. Clark is basketball's version of a virtuoso rock star. Unpredictable, flashy, a force of pure, untamable individualism who bends the game to her will through sheer talent and force of personality. The clash was not just possible, it was inevitable. Under Reeve and the shadowy, powerful selection committee, the message was sent out loud and clear, not through press releases but through actions. You will conform to our system, or you will not be a part of it. Whispers began to circulate almost immediately among insiders and reporters. They suggested that Clark's game, with its jaw-dropping deep threes and high-risk, high-reward passes, was viewed dismissively as street ball by the team's purists. They freaked endlessly about her defensive liabilities and what they perceived as an on-court swagger that bordered on disrespect for the right way to play. Became chillingly clear that being the most popular and electrifying player in the world didn't guarantee you a seat at their table. In fact, it might have actually painted a giant target on your back. The stage was now perfectly set for a monumental confrontation between the old guard and the new phenom, and it would culminate in a single stunning decision that sent shock waves of disbelief and anger through the entire sports world. The news broke like a thunderclap across the sports media landscape. Caitlin-Clark, the woman who had single-handedly revitalized interest in women's basketball, was officially left off the 2024 Paris Olympic roster, in a move that defied all conventional logic for casual fans, media executives, and sponsors alike, the most famous and marketable basketball player on the planet would not be representing her country on the world's biggest stage. The official reasons from the committee started to trickle out, and they felt flimsy, almost insulting from the very start. They claimed she lacked significant experience with the senior national team, a bizarre excuse for a player who had already dominated and won an MVP award at a FIBA World Tournament, and they pointed to the fact that she couldn't attend all the necessary training camps because of her historic deep run in the NCAA tournament, as if punishing a player for her own success was a valid strategy. They talked about wanting players who had pre-existing chemistry from playing together for years, essentially arguing for a closed club that no new talent could ever hope to break into. But for the millions of new fans she had brought to the sport, these excuses sounded hollow and disingenuous. The public outcry was immediate, ferocious, and unified. Pundits on ESPN and Fox Sports called it a massive, unforgivable mistake. Social media platforms like Twitter and TikTok erupted with furious accusations of jealousy, gatekeeping, and pure, unadulterated stupidity. This decision wasn't just a simple roster choice. Felt deeply personal, a deliberate and calculated slight. It was the system in its infinite arrogance telling its biggest star that she wasn't welcome, that her revolutionary talent and unprecedented popularity were not only not enough, but were perhaps the very things that disqualified her. Official reasons were nothing more than a poorly constructed smoke screen. Behind them, the real, much darker stories began to leak from behind the closed doors of USA Basketball. As the firestorm of public controversy raged on, the whispers from insiders grew into a roar, painting a much darker and more complex picture of why Caitlin Clark was really snubbed. 3 dominant and disturbing theories emerged, each one peeling back another layer of the politics at play. The first was the most primal and easiest to understand. Simple, old-fashioned jealousy. Rumors spread like wildfire that some powerful veteran players on the team felt Clark hadn't earned her spot in the traditional way. They had spent years, even decades, grinding in the system, attending every camp, playing overseas, and patiently waiting their turn for the Olympic spotlight. To them, Clark was a rookie sensation, a media darling who was trying to cut the line, and her immense, inescapable media attention was reportedly rubbing some of the established stars the very wrong way. The second theory was purely tactical, centered around coach Cheryl Reeve's rigid basketball philosophy. Insiders claimed that the coaching staff was genuinely and deeply concerned that Clark's ball-dominant high-risk style would completely disrupt the team's carefully constructed offensive flow. They wanted a point guard who was a pass-first distributor, a reliable cog in their machine, not the entire engine? Her well-documented defensive lapses, which were often criticized in college, were reportedly a major point of contention in the selection room. But the third and most explosive theory was that this was a deliberate, cold-blooded power play by the USA Basketball Committee itself. They saw the Caitlin Clark effect swelling into a cultural tidal wave and worried that one player was becoming bigger, more powerful, and more influential than the entire program. By leaving her off the team, they were sending a chilling message to her agents, the media, and the world. No one is bigger than the red, white, and blue shield. It was a brutal move to reassert control and to prove that the old money gatekeepers of the sport still held all the power, no matter how famous or beloved a player became. The decision to leave Caitlin Clark in the United States while the rest of the team heads to Paris goes far beyond the hardwood of the basketball court. It's a strategic decision with massive, cascading financial consequences that many sports business analysts are calling a billion-dollar fumble. Caitlin Clark effect is not a media-created myth. It's a verifiable economic phenomenon backed by hard data. Her groundbreaking presence in the WNBA has led to unprecedented record-breaking ticket sales, with multiple teams being forced to move their home games against her to larger NBA arenas just to accommodate the crushing demand. Her television ratings are consistently 2, 3, or even 4 times higher than the league average, bringing in millions of new viewers. She brings with her a tidal wave of casual fans, the very audience that the sport so desperately needs to secure its long-term growth and financial viability. NBC, the network broadcasting the Olympics, was reportedly banking on Clark being the central magnetic face of their entire Paris coverage. Transcendent star who could draw in viewers who don't normally watch any sport, let alone women's basketball. Without her, the potential for a massive, culture-shifting ratings boom has completely vanished. Major sponsors who have invested tens of millions of dollars in Clark, global giants like Nike, Gatorade, and State Farm, lost a golden opportunity to activate their biggest asset on the most visible stage in international sports. For this whole fiasco created a fundamental, irreconcilable conflict between the two wearing sides of the sport. On one side, you have the basketball purists and old school coaches on the selection committee who stubbornly believe they made the correct basketball decision to build the best possible team. On the other side, you have the network executives, the marketing gurus, and the league commissioners who see the decision as a catastrophic, self-inflicted failure to capitalize on a once-in-a-generation opportunity for explosive growth. It raises a critical, burning question. In the modern, hyper-commercialized era of sports, can any league or organization afford to prioritize its outdated traditions over the very superstar who holds the golden key to its future prosperity? This entire our ugly saga has violently pulled back the curtain on the inner workings of USA basketball, revealing a powerful insular system that many now believe is fundamentally broken and dangerously out of touch with the modern sports landscape. For decades their rigid hierarchical process worked flawlessly. They would identify elite talent early in their careers, meticulously bring them through the national team pipeline, and demand they pay their dues for years before being granted a coveted spot on the Olympic roster. This ruthless method created dynasty after dynasty of gold medal-winning teams, but it also fostered a toxic culture of exclusivity, cronyism, and a deep-seated resistance to any form of change. But the world has changed dramatically around them. Modern sports fan raised on social media, and 24/7 sports coverage is drawn to individual superstars: LeBron James, Tom Brady, Lionel Messi. These iconic individuals transcend their teams and even their sports, driving global engagement and conversation. Caitlin Clark is unequivocally the first female basketball player to reach that rarefied level of individual stardom, and the archaic system simply did not know how to handle her. Instead of embracing her as a revolutionary force that could elevate the entire sport to new heights, they treated her as a foreign agent, a dangerous threat to their established, comfortable order. The snub has now forced a painful public reckoning. Is the primary goal of Team USA to simply win another gold medal? With a group of 12 familiar system approved faces? Or is it also to grow the game and inspire the next generation of players and fans?